next session, which is the main poster presentation. But because of time, I advise you to look her up online. Talia, please.
Great. Good morning, everyone. I know that we need to keep moving along, but maybe everyone could just stand up, put your laptop down for a second, and let the blood move a bit. Otherwise, we'll sort of sleepwalk into lunch. Yep, do a little jiggle, a little stretch. Hey, great participation. Thanks, everybody. Wonderful. Yes, so moving right along, you're welcome to stay standing if you feel like it. My name is Thalia Sparling. I'm with the Zimana team at London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, and I welcome you to the second of 3 poster presentations. As Ori mentioned yesterday, this is a unique part of the ANH Academy Week where poster presenters get to explain their work in 1 minute. So in case you missed it yesterday, the way this will work is that I will call your name. This is a hybrid session, so we'll have some presenters online and some presenters here with us in person, and I will call your name, and you can either come online or stand on our T here, and I will tell you that your time starts now, and then we will clap for you once your minute is over. So we are going to go by theme, and the first theme we have today is on nutrition in crises and protracted humanitarian contexts, and I welcome Annette Adong to the foyer.
Okay, thank you so much. So our research is on the effect of the Lord resistance armed conflict in Uganda and its effects on the food consumption pathways. So ideally, we look at 3 measures of conflict exposure, that is directly affected households, those households within 5 kilometers radius of conflict, and those within 10 kilometers radius of conflict. So we see this impact in the short run, that's 3 years after the cessation of hostilities and 6 years after the cessation of hostilities. So our findings show that in the short run, households affected by conflict will rely less on food production, more on market purchases and transfers. But in the long run, they will start to rely on food production, but that's on the lower side. They rely more on transfers. So our conclusions is humanitarian assistance should cover a wider distance. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Next, I'll welcome David Zinga. Your time starts now.
The upsurge of shocks has exacerbated food and nutrition security in Malawi. The pathways by which these shocks affect households and food security are through the income pathway and the food production pathway. In our study, posed a question on the potential of remittances in combating food and shock effects. We find out that remittances are able to combat food insecurity. However, they are unable to do so for household diversity. Yeah, thank you.
Ooh. You can trade your time for someone else, like carbon trading. Yeah, great. And now I'll welcome Stevie Katiyaza to the stage, and your time starts now.
Hi, everyone. What we do know is that recent studies have shown that cost of deaths are higher globally, including Malawi. But the question is, do markets deliver nutritious foods? So to address this research question, we examine how transport costs affect food prices across markets in Malawi. So we use existing data that is collected by the National Statistical Office to monitor consumer prices in Malawi and apply econometric procedures to examine systematically how changes in fuel prices affect food prices across markets. What we do find is that the increase in transport costs reduces affordability of nutrient-dense and less nutrient-dense foods, including maize in Malawi, which means that there are both implications for food security as well as nutrition. Therefore, need for promotion of pesticides.
Wonderful. Fantastic, Usman. Next, I will welcome Usman Ibrahim. And And your time starts now.
It's not more news in Nigeria that we are facing a lot of problem from banditries and insurgency. And most people are moving to the ID camps, and we are trying to look at how we can make the people in IDP camps to be able to have source of income and also to develop a nutritional program that caters for all categories of people. And so we are trying to use GAMS, that is the general arithmetic modeling system, to develop a sustainable food system while they are in the ID camp. And then we are also, unfortunately, we still have problem working with GAMS. So we are looking for experts who can support us in this program. Thank you.
Wonderful. Next, we will go to an online presentation from Ringi Segal. Your time starts now.
This study explores interlinkages between household agricultural production diversity and household food security. And the empirical evidence comes from Malawi. The work is motivated by the poor dietary diversity in Malawi in the sample area and how to improve it. So farmers can either grow a diverse set of crops, and since they consume a considerable portion of their produce, or they can produce only the profit maximizing crops and then use the income earned to purchase a diverse food basket from the market. So we use two food security indicators, one to measure dietary diversity and the another that measures how people behave when there is insufficient food. And in terms of results, we find that as the production diversity increases, the overall food consumption score, which measures dietary diversity, remains same, but that is because pulse consumption increases and that of meat reduces, and so does the reporting of food insecurity behavior.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ringi. I forgot to mention we've moved from humanitarian crises to food system programs, impacts and processes, as well as economics. I'd like to welcome our next online presenter, Theo Zimana, and your time starts now.
Biofortification of staple crops is a cost-effective strategy to address micronutrient deficiencies in developing countries such as Rwanda. Our research was motivated by the need for information that can be used to track and assess the performance of biofortification programs. Our results indicated that 80% of the surveyed households were aware of iron biofortified beans, and only 10% of the households currently consume this type of beans. Factors affecting consumption of iron biofortified beans vary, including the fact that many households grow iron biofortified beans, mainly for income generation and not for consumption. So for more information, you can check our poster and our article. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I'd like to welcome Craig Cohen, and your time starts now.
Pregnant women living with HIV are vulnerable to experiencing food insecurity with significant consequences for both maternal and child health. Shamba Maisha, a cluster randomized controlled trial in Western Kenya, which means farming for life in Kiswahili, tested the effects of a multisectoral livelihood agricultural intervention. This sub-analysis demonstrated that participants who became pregnant had similar nutritional benefits from the intervention as those who were not pregnant during the trial. Here are words from some of our participants. There were a lot of changes during my last recent pregnancy compared to my past pregnancies. I had very little income during my past pregnancies. Shamba Maisha made me have the heart to farm. When I got pregnant with this child, I had vegetables in my farm to eat and sell them to make money. I delivered when I was energetic. I pushed the baby when I was full of energy. But during the previous pregnancies, I ran out of energy as I did not have much to eat. To learn more about Shamba Maisha, come to poster 36.
I welcome Savannah OMalley to the stage, and your time starts now.
How can we improve child diets in rural areas? The EFFECT study is a randomized controlled trial conducted in Tanzania. We utilized two pathways to improve food access. 1, encouraging families to purchase diverse foods at local markets, and 2, encouraging families to produce diverse foods at home. We tested the effect of engaging fathers alongside mothers and the effect of including parenting alongside nutrition messages. We found that diversity of foods purchased and produced were each independently associated with child's adequate intake of essential nutrients. Households receiving the intervention had more diverse foods purchased and more diverse foods produced at home compared to households receiving no intervention. We also found that child dietary diversity improved dramatically, but only when fathers were engaged and provided both nutrition and parenting content. Come to poster number 37 to get the full story.
Next, I'd like to welcome Stella Nortagen, and your time starts now.
Most people get at least some of the food that they eat from private sector companies, and much of the world's population can't afford a healthy diet. Considering those two facts jointly, we wondered what private sector companies can do to try and reach lower income consumers with nutritious foods. And we did a systematic review to find out. We screened over 8,000 titles and identified 73 eligible documents, as well as 99 case study companies. Synthesizing across those, we identified 13 unique approaches that companies have used to try and reach lower income consumers. These include really simple things like just putting food in smaller packages, and more complex ones like using cross-subsidization models across multiple product lines and customer groups. These are used by a mix of small local companies as well as large multinationals, and they're used for highly nutritious foods as well as some less nutritious options like sugary drinks and cookies. But do they work? Come to my poster and find out.
Thank you very much. And I welcome Tina Manani back to the stage. Your time starts now.
In Malawi, fish forms the main source of animal protein to children aged 6 to 23 months old. However, children are mostly fed only fish watery broth. This study aimed to improve diet quality by integrating fish into complementary foods. 17 fish-based recipes were collected from all regions in Malawi, and the nutrient composition was determined. 8 recipes of complementary foods were modified to protein content of at least 5 grams per 100-gram dish. During modification, sun-dried fish was replaced with parboiled fish powder. We concluded that fish-fortified millet and sorghum porridges can enhance nutrition quality of diets because their protein contents met the recommended daily intakes, and they had higher energy and mineral contents than the rest of the complementary foods. For more information, visit poster number 39. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I welcome Sione Chikumbu. And your time starts now.
Good morning. Does a boost in food resources caution against an inadequate intakes of different micronutrients? Not according to the findings in our study, which we conducted in a rural Malawian community. So we hypothesized that a receipt of free maize flour for a period of 3 months was going to offer dietary benefits through savings in time as well as resources. But we did find, according to our findings, that a large proportion of the women in our study had multiple micronutrient inadequacies at baseline. Contrary to our hypothesis, the proportion at risk of inadequate intakes increased at end line, and we suggest that it's because of a 16% increase in maize flour consumption, as well as a decrease in legume consumption. And we recommend that resource empowerment must be accompanied by an educational component if we are going to have dietary gains. Thank you. More information at poster number 40.
Thank you very much. We're going to move now to a new theme on behavioral research related to diets, nutrition, and health. And I welcome Daniel Pfaff. Thank you, and your time starts now.
The goal of this task was to identify and visualize potentials to increase dietary diversity in children 6 to 24 months and their mothers. For this, we grouped food intake measured with 24-hour recall data into the 7 food groups used to measure minimum diversity for children. Red colors indicate, here you can see the example for green leafy vegetables and vitamin A-rich fruits and vegetables. Red colors indicate that neither mother nor child ate the food on the previous day. Yellow, only the child. Blue, only the mother. And green, both. So the potentials that we see is now if people don't consume it at all, for example in Ethiopia, or only if the mothers ate them. This indicates that the foods are available in the household, but they're not fed to the child. So now the task is to understand why the children are not fed those foods. And yeah, for more information, you can approach me or visit poster 41. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next, I'll welcome Edward Mushi. Your time starts now.
Okay, so although crops biofortification is considered the best way to reduce the micronutrient deficiency, the consumer acceptance for the same is not guaranteed. So we used the theory of consumer behavior and the theory of plant behavior to try to ascertain factors which could affect the intention to consume high iron beans. So we find that consumer attitude, knowledge, passive behavior control, passive benefits, and passive threats actually predicts the intention to consume high iron beans. So we recommend that considering these factors should be an integral part of the consumer intervention regarding nutrition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next, I will introduce Lindsey Zach, and your time starts now.
Okay, have you been curious to know if people who work in the fish value chain are going to have better diets than those that have not been involved in the value chain? We were curious to find out. So we found out that it does not necessarily mean that if you're working in the fish value chain, you're going to have a better diet. We did not find any differences in the diets. All the populations were having not very significant dietary diversity, according to that graph. And then we found a higher vegetable consumption and a low animal source protein consumption. But even though it was low, fish was consumed more, especially small fish. And we found that participation in the value chain was positively associated with consuming more fish. So if you want to know more of why this is like this, come to poster number 43. Thank you.
Next, I welcome Elodie Mate-Totel. Yes, and your time starts now.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. The consumption of food away from home is a growing phenomenon, but it has received little attention in low and middle income countries. So we led a literature review on the drivers and the modalities of eating out. The higher incomes and urbanizations are among the identified drivers, the main identified ones, while the modalities tend to highlight a tendency towards the individualization of the behaviors, a westernization of the diets. So we revisit those common features in Burkina Faso and in Vietnam, leading qualitative surveys with consumers and with food vendors. And we found that first, eating out is as frequent in villages than in cities. Second, that eating out behaviors are highly socialized and embedded with kin and work relationships. And third, that eating out is not necessarily equivalent to a substitution.
Next, I welcome Panchali Moitra. Your time starts now.
Hi, India is still indeed struggling to beat the burden of undernutrition, yet the perils of overnutrition in the backdrop of an obesogenic food environment and an unfavorable nutrition transition is gradually but steadily creeping into our communities. Obesity is multifactorial, it is a complex phenomenon. Therefore, we conducted a mixed method study to explore the perceptions of obesity risk in key stakeholders and evaluate the social, behavioral, and food environmental determinants in school children. Several barriers such as pervasiveness of unhealthy snacks in the food environment, limited exposure to nutrition literacy in academic curriculum, and a lot of issues in terms of the parental food environments come over. The odds of obesity were associated with maternal education with regards to the different socioeconomic status there. And if these are some of the factors which brought together, there are many more which can be discovered when you come to our poster number 45. So please do come over. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Next, I would like to welcome Taonga Chirwa Maonga. And your time starts now.
Non-communicable diseases continue to rise globally, and we know that the food environment plays a role in shaping the diets of individuals. So we conducted this research to determine or to understand the role of the food environment and the role that it plays in shaping the diets that surround Zambian fermented milk called mabisi, which has the potential to prevent non-communicable diseases when consumed as part of a healthy diet. So we went to 2 districts in eastern and southern Zambia, which differ in consumption of mabisi. And we used photo voice, which is a qualitative study where we asked participants to take pictures of their food environment. And we discussed these in one-on-one interviews and also in focus group discussions. So our main findings were that the 2 districts didn't differ much, except for that mabisi was not highly consumed. It wasn't part of the food environment in eastern Zambia. For more, please come to poster number 46. Thank you.
Wonderful. For the next, our last presentation in this group, we'll have Caitlin Conway-Moore online. So just hold on one second. And your time can start now.
Hello. Following from a qualitative mapping exercise on the drivers of adolescent obesity with 16 to 18-year-olds in 6 countries, we sought to examine associations between social media use and both adolescent mental health and diet in the recent literature. We conducted a systematic review on studies published between 2019 and 2023, which resulted in a total of 21 included studies covering 12 countries. Our key findings were that social media potentially plays a role in the food system for adolescents by negatively affecting their body image, self-esteem, anxiety, depressive symptoms, as well as their disordered eating, emotional eating, and attention to hunger and fullness cues. Our conclusions are that policy interventions are needed to mitigate these impacts, and more studies are needed to identify causal pathways, the role of social media influencers, equity impacts, and tools for measuring social media exposure. Please come see me at poster number 47 to learn more. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Now we're going to move on to studies looking at environment, climate change, and food systems. And I'd like to welcome Katiyaza.
Thank you. Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. So here, ever since the United Nations Food System Summit has happened since 2021, the discussion is how the food system transition would look like. So here in this study, we look at the food system transition for India, and we try to develop a pathway, which is known as the Food System Development Pathway for India, and looking forward to 2050. So the motivation from this comes from the Food System Economic Commission, which is a commission which looks after 4 pillars, that is the health, environment, inclusion, and economy. We look into 25 measures, which includes demand and supply side measures, and also mitigation efforts, and combined into policy packages. So we try to look into 15 indicators of food system, and we find that overall the healthy diets translation to Eat Lancet leads towards environmentally sustainable and better nutritional outcomes. For more, look into poster number 48.
Thank you very much. We have another presentation online now from Stephanie Horn, and you can begin now.
Hi, everybody. So over the past few years, many researchers have developed frameworks to guide food and nutrition system assessments, and we've employed those frameworks to assess the environmental and nutritional dimensions of aquatic food systems in Bangladesh. We integrated nutrition metrics into life cycle assessment methodology and evaluated the nutritional affordability of all the species that were included within the study. We determined the environmental hotspots and nutritional quality of the systems, and we were able to identify the most sustainable, affordable, and nutritious fish species. By using interdisciplinary methods, we've shed light on the trade-offs and the synergies between the environmental impacts and nutritional outcomes of aquatic food systems. And the results show us that integrating sustainability metrics and indicators can affect the overall results of food system performance assessments. And that tells us that further interdisciplinary studies are urgently needed to measure global food system performance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to welcome online Tony Carr, and your time starts now.
Hi, everyone. So our study focused on the question, can the food system in the Gambia provide enough healthy food given the challenges of rising demand and climate change? And because of the many challenges to the food system in the Gambia, the government wants to be informed about different scenarios that affect future food and nutrition security. So to do this, we used the Favorable Food System model to estimate changes for future food demand and supply. And to estimate these changes, we developed scenarios on demographics, diets, trade, land use, and food production together with stakeholders in workshops. In the scenarios, we specifically focused on climate change impacts on agriculture and the potential of adaptation strategies to increase production. And our results show that the current domestic food production will not meet national food demand by 2050, which leads to a supply-demand gap, but investments in fertilizer, irrigation, and climate change adaptation could halve this gap. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. Next, I'd like to welcome Joshua Kafotokoza.
Okay, so last year I was in Blantyre when Cyclone Anna hit. We had 3 days of of in-season rain, 5 days of no water supply, and a whole week of no electricity. This was followed by a dry spell that affected the entire southern region. This motivated our study where we're trying to understand what is the impact of climatic shocks on food security. This is a complex question. We attempted to address it by using a robust measure of climatic shocks, assessing all dimensions of food security, and disentangling the effects across food category, gender, and agroecological zones. I'll not tell you the results. Come to my poster number 51 for more.
Thank you very much, Joshua. Next, I'll welcome Lais Miashon.
Food systems everywhere are being called on to deliver healthier and more sustainable diets. And you know what they say, what gets measured gets done, and what doesn't get measured gets modeled. Like in many other countries in the global majority, in Cambodia, there are no recent estimates of dietary intake using nationally representative survey data. So in order to understand whether Cambodian diets are in line with the planetary health diet proposed by the Eat Lancet Commission, we first needed to characterize current intakes. We did that by triangulating information from 4 different quantitative data sources: FAO food balance sheets, household consumption expenditure surveys, and 2 model data sources from the Global Dietary Database and the Global Burden of Disease. If you want to understand more about how these 4 intake estimates compare to estimate the consumption of 13 food groups for Cambodia,
Thank you very much, Lais. Next and finally, I welcome Yanko Kaimilo. Your time starts now.
Experts have told us that we should eat less red meat because it's going to help us with preventing cardiovascular diseases. And they have told us to eat more fiber and increase our fruits and vegetables. But if we're being honest, most of us don't actually do it because it's not as easy as it sounds, isn't it? So at the University of Reading, we are putting the beans in the bread so that we can improve people's intake of fruits and vegetables, micronutrients. So if you really want to find out how we're doing this and why we have chosen beans, particularly faba bean, and its environmental impact, then come and see us at poster number 53 and we can have a chat. See you then.
Back on the schedule is Beverly and Lair.
Thank you.
You can
So
start
food
now.
security programs around the world are shifting towards integrating marketing systems and nutrition programs, but this requires an understanding of how food environments influence food choices. Currently, there is no tool to inform this integration. Therefore, we set out to design, test, and validate a tool that measures personal and environmental food factors that influence the consumption of fish and dairy in Lilongwe, Malawi. This was done through quantitative and qualitative processes. Finally, we conducted a stakeholder validation of the results. To find out more, please visit us at poster number 53. Thank you.
Thank you all very much for your attention.